Don't mind my new cat.
Okay. He or she?
He,
Okay.
Luca.
Luca, okay.
He's
Oh, he's adorable. He's adorable.
he is 3 months. No, he's 5. He's 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Oh,
He's 6 weeks.
looks pretty big for. Is that? It looks pretty big for 6 weeks. Or am I saying that ignorantly?
No, I think he's tiny.
For 6 weeks, he's tiny.
Yeah,
Oh, he is.
tiny.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Anyway, here we are.
Yes.
Now, how do I pronounce your name?
Yeah, Magan.
Magan.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're a fellow podcaster.
I am.
We were just talking about that a second ago.
Yes.
What's your podcast about?
And my podcast is called the Inner Self Rising Podcast.
Yep.
It's podcast for free thinkers who are focused on self-development and living authentically.
Yeah, right.
So I like to interview interesting people who are kind of on the fringe. So I call my listeners outliers.
Allies.
Yeah, so anyone who's like an outlier, you're the kind of odd one out of your friend group, or you don't feel like you belong based on values. Like your values are different to
Yeah.
your bubble.
Yeah.
And then you've actively gone on the journey to, live out your values. And so sometimes that means you have to leave your bubble, or your bubble kicks you out. And so that's the kind of people that I want to connect with and reach out to, because I've felt like an outlier my entire life, not really belonging anywhere. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I feel like I never belonged anywhere.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. It's, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I know this podcast is about you, but like every now and then I like talk about myself, and I've spoken about myself so many times. I feel like I'm getting a bit repetitive, but it's actually my story. So, so I grew up overseas as a third culture kid.
Oh, okay.
And so I was born in Singapore, grew up in Southeast Asia.
Oh, okay.
My dad's Australian, my mum's Indonesian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So third culture kid is someone who grows up in a country not of their origin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so because I was the most Asian looking as well, I always got like stares, and because I was also 6 foot at like age 12. Right?
Oh my God. Oh
and
my God. Yeah.
and like Australian kids would come to Singapore and they'd be like, "Oh, what nationality are you?" And I'd be like, "Australian." "Oh, what part of Australia did you live in?" "Oh, I've never lived in Australia."
Oh, wow.
And then they would say, "How can you call yourself Australian?"
Right.
Because kids are cruel, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Oh, well, you start to believe that. You're like, how can I call myself Australian?" And then we go to Indonesia, and I'd stick out because we were like the mixed kids.
Okay.
Like everybody wanted to be mixed. They wanted to have whiter skin, or like, have Western blood, because they felt like having Western blood meant you had more money.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'd go to Australia. We go to Perth for holiday, and and then when we moved to Perth, mate, I got like racism like hard.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause-
Yeah.
Picture this. A guy who's tall, Asian, with an American accent comes to your school. How foreign is that? That's foreign. Like day one, like I got called nip, I got called chink, I got called like everything under the sun.
Oh, wow.
Guy shouted at me.
So what area did you grow up in Melbourne?
In Perth.
Up there,
Yeah, Perth northern suburbs.
Okay, I wouldn't. I've never been to Perth. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But like, first day of school, I got told to fucking go home, go back to where I came from. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So I never really I grew up like going, okay, well, I'm different, but like no one really, like I didn't have a set group of friends. I didn't have,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I could definitely relate to some of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the idea of third culture kid. I can relate to it because I'm originally from Somalia.
Yep.
But I was born in Yemen,
Right.
and so I have two brothers, one sister. Unfortunately, one of my brothers passed away recently.
Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so we were all born in different countries.
Right.
And so we moved. So I was born in Yemen, and then my younger brother was born in Malta, which is where we all moved to. Stayed there for a few years, and then came to Australia when I was 4. I'm 37 now.
Mm-hmm.
Came to Australia when I was 4, and then kind of like grew up in Australia, Melbourne, in a very city. That's all I have known is the city. And so, but I come from a very strict culture. So I grew up Muslim.
Yep.
And I come, very, very strict culture. And it was the opposite to, Australian sensibilities, Australian culture. It was the complete opposite. And so I was kind of stuck in, kind of both worlds. I grew up with being taught that, I need to separate myself from wider Australia because their values are different to our values. And
was that like in your home?
In the home, yeah.
In your home well as at school and stuff, or
so at school,
was school slightly different?
So school was kind of different because I didn't have. So I went to Steiner School. That was my first high school I went to, was a Steiner School.
Right.
And I don't know, for those who don't know what Steiner School is, it's more like alternative.
Right.
It's more, I guess, hippie, if you want to call it, and so, but at school I could sort of just blend in a bit more. But I still, because Islam's very indoctrinating, it's very powerful in the way it controls your mind, and I wasn't able to form real, genuine friendships because I'm being taught that I can't be friends because in Islam we're taught we can't be friends with non-Muslims.
Right.
Non-Muslims are all going to go to hell. So you have two options in that kind of situation.
I think we're all going to go somewhere.
Yeah,
it may be the same place.
So you believe in the next life?
I have a lot of Buddhist beliefs.
Okay.
It's interesting when my mum divorced my dad, she kind of like went through a whole lot of religions.
Oh, okay.
And she took me and my brother with her.
Oh, really?
And I remember when she went through Buddhism, she took us to a temple, and I was like, I was really fascinated. I'm like, oh my God. And then when I came here, I lived with a guy that I found out of the paper, like, because this is pre-internet, out of the paper, renters. People are listening going, what the fuck? And he had a lot of, like, Buddhist beliefs. And, like, yeah, so, and then my best mate, also his family, his dad's Buddhist. I have to call him this weekend, actually, for my best mate's birthday. But Christian passed away 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I believe in there is an afterlife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know. Oh, I was taught. So growing up, I was taught to believe that there's a next life. There's a literal hell and there's a literal heaven. And so what you do on this, so you go to heaven or hell based on what you do in this life, and the things that you do in this life have to be in accordance with the Islamic doctrine. I don't know how much you know about Islam. Okay. Yeah. All right. So it's it's.
I know bits and bobs,
Okay.
but yeah,
Okay.
if you want to give like a brief,
Yeah.
a very
Okay.
quick explanation.
Yeah. So Islam's one of the it's part of the Abrahamic faiths, and so, in Islam, you only worship one God, and that one God is called Allah.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you have to also believe that Allah, God, sent the final prophet, and his name was Muhammad. And so, and Muhammad and Allah, God, revealed a book to Muhammad called the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Quran, it's making claims about, God creating the universe, the heavens and earth, and all this sort of stuff. And also, so in the Islamic tradition, there's also this concept called hadiths, which is basically sayings of the Prophet. That teaches you basically how to be a Muslim. So Islam is one part spiritual, one part legislative. So there's Sharia law. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before. So one part legislative. So it legislates how you should behave, from the way you cut your hair, from the way you go to the toilet, from the way you sleep, from the way you have a shower. Everything, it dictates everything you should do. And so if you don't follow those, if you don't follow it to the T, you're sinning. And so that's kind of that's the kind of environment that I grew up in. So, the genders are separated. Wasn't allowed to listen to music. Music was, there's a concept called haram in Islam, which means forbidden, and halal is that which is allowed. So suffice to say, there's a lot of harams. There's a lot of harams. One of them being music, one of them, you can't date, for example. You just have to get married, basically. And there's a lot more other, more, intense rulings or laws. So, for example, since I left Islam, and so I'm considered an apostate. And so in Islam, apostates are punishable by death under Sharia law. And so I'm also gay. And so homosexuality is also punishable by death in Islam.
That's two very uncomfortable situations to be in, considering your childhood.
Yes.
And your upbringing.
Yes.
And the difficulties that presents in the relationships with your immediate family and things like that. Like how how did that come about?
I mean,
uncomfortably.
Yeah. Do you mean how did I feel about it, or how did I what was it like?
Yeah, what was it like having to have that type of conversation with like your immediate family about you leaving Islam?
Yeah.
And you didn't want to be Muslim anymore.
No, yeah, that's right. So it's one of the things I always say is you have to sort of suspend the Western thinking. You have to suspend that, and then think of it like if you were in a country that doesn't believe in the Enlightenment, a country that doesn't acknowledge the concept of you being an individual, like a sovereign individual. Think of it like there's no individuality. You are part of the collective. I come from a collectivist culture, and so there's no concept of the individual. So you are just a part of the community, and you're an extension of the community. And so there's a particular narrative and particular story, and that's basically, and there's rules, and that's how you should live. So, before even any kind of conversation can occur, I had to get to a point where I could articulate where I could articulate what it is that I think and feel. Had to go on this whole private journey before I could even express anything of figuring out who I am, figuring out, my story, where I'm at.
In secret as well.
In secret, yes. In secret. It's a huge taboo, yeah. It's
fucking hell.
Yeah, 'cause there's no question. So, for example, Islam means submission. Okay, so So it's founded on this idea that you submit, right? It's not, you don't think. So there's a concept in Islam called, this principle called, in Arabic, it's sami'na wa ata'na. That means basically I hear and I obey. So there's no I hear and I think and I assess and I base this thing this idea that I'm hearing on my values and how I view the world. None of that exists. It's I hear and then I obey. So that's the premise that we're starting with here. Is there's no individuality, there's no thinking, you can think so long as you come to the same conclusion as Islam. But outside of that, it's a no-no. So there's, then you have to worry about the threat of exile, losing community, family, friends, all of that's on the line. And so I got to a point where I had to say, am I going to choose me? Am I going to choose my well-being? Am I going to preserve myself? Or am I going to live for other people? Am I going to just base my entire life for others? And so I chose me. I chose me, and I began to question things out loud. And in that process, I lost friends. I lost. So just backtrack a little bit. So my parents split when I was 4. So as soon as we came to Australia, they split. So my dad was he was a Pan-Africanist. He was quite liberal, very, very open-minded. Whereas my mother was the complete opposite.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Very close-minded. She, didn't see me as an individual.
So she kept the kids.
Yeah. So we were never individuals. We were just extensions of her. And in Islam, the rank of a mother is really high. So basically, if you want to go to heaven, your mother has to be pleased with you. And so you give that
Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah.
Not laughing out
No,
of disrespect. I'm laughing because it just sounds so ridiculous.
It's yeah. Which is why I always say you have to suspend the Western mind.
Yeah.
You have to suspend that and try to enter the mindset try to enter a mindset of an ideology that's founded on you're not an individual, you're a part of a collective, and there's this theocratic rule over you that you have to submit to. Yeah. So the luxuries of thinking for yourself and separation, and I'm a human being who has rights and has a future and a destiny. I want to create all those things. Like I want to create my own destiny. All those things were non-existent in my upbringing. It was not. Everything was preordained, and I had to follow it. No questions asked, because God, and then my mother, who God has given her all this power, has have already created my destiny for me.
Okay, so you kind of went on this personal journey of self-discovery in secret.
Yes.
How long do you think that took you to, I mean, I also think that we're always on a journey, whether or not we know it or not, and we're always learning and absorbing and taking things on from the universe, always. But for you to come to this point where you're ready to articulate what you want, how you want it, what you want to say, how long did that take you?
Yeah, it was a long journey. So for me, it wasn't so much, I had to figure out who I was, and then I had to express that. It was more, so my mother, I categorize her as a narcissist. And so people always say, you're not a psychologist, Magan, who the hell are you to diagnose her? And my response to that is always, yes, I'm not a psychologist, and I don't diagnose anyone. But for me, I use the term narcissism or narcissistic as a descriptive term. So that term describes a certain set of behaviors. And there's 2 particular main qualities about a narcissist. And that is narcissists are typically entitled, extremely entitled,
Mm.
and exploitative.
Mm.
And so, to me, that's how I use the term as a descriptive term. So my mother was that. She
Mm.
was extremely entitled, and incredibly exploitative. And so, while I was going through this whole process of finding myself and coming to terms with who I was and all that sort of stuff, a big part of that was also reckoning with the fact that my mother was a narcissist. And it's very hard for people to understand because we live in a world that worships parents. We live in a world that they worship parents, and I don't think so I have 2 nephews and a niece, right? So I tell them all the time. Tell them all the time. Well, my niece is too little to understand, but my older nephews, I tell them, I'm your uncle and you're my nephews, but that just happened per accident, right? Neither you or I asked for this.
Mm.
So I don't. So I don't expect respect based on this title that I didn't earn, right? So I need to work for your respect. Just because I'm your uncle, it's a title that was given to me. I didn't work for it, so I don't feel I have no right to use that over you. And so I feel the same way about parents. A lot of times parents will talk about their own sacrifice and they've sacrificed this for their kids, but a lot of the times people have kids for other people. They want to be the same as everyone else. Everyone else is having kids, so they have it for their own reasons. Okay?
It's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes, a lot of times that's what it is. And a lot of times it's their own fulfillment, and no judgment there at all. I want to be a dad one day. But it's for their own fulfillment, and it's for their own reasons why they're having kids. To keep their DNA going, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for whatever reason, we've all just accepted this collective lie that parents, for the most part, or every single parent, has had children because they love them, because they love their children. And to me, it's not true. From what I've seen, it's not true. So, like my mother's a classic example. So she'll talk about, she left Somalia and wanted to have a better life for us, and she brought us to Australia. But it was all for her. She wasn't thinking about us when she left Somalia. I wasn't even born in Somalia. So I was born in Yemen. So she left Africa because she wanted a better life. But the narrative seems to be that she left for us. And I'm like, well,
Who says that?
Well, parents do, and and typically a lot of I've found a lot of immigrant children are almost like held captive to this idea that my parents did all these. And granted, yeah, some parents do, and I'm never going to take that away from them. But also, if your parents are fleeing civil war, they're not thinking about you; they think about themselves as well, right? That's just a fact. They're fleeing civil war because they want to save themselves, and in turn, you get saved as well. That's how I see it. But it's often the other way around. Like a mother will say, I gave birth to you, I carried you for 9 months. But I'm like, but I didn't choose that process. Right? No child chose that process. Right? You made the decision to have a child, but for whatever reason, it's you're using that against me. For whatever reason, but
I understand what you're saying. And I guess it's just a different perspective.
Yeah.
It's a very different perspective because of this narrative that we've always listened to.
Yeah.
And so, and you mentioned it before about Islam, just push the Western side of things across.
Yeah.
If you're able to do that, then you can categorically understand what's going on.
Yeah, you can begin to grasp the reality.
And if we keep an open mind to whatever possibilities there are, then any narrative is possible. And so, if and you've mentioned it's not every single case, but there would be cases where parents do it for themselves.
Yes.
They don't do it for their kids.
Yes.
They do it for themselves.
Yes. And it's not every parent.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is a particular idea.
Yeah.
Right. This umbrella idea that lumps all parents in together. And I just don't. I think that's harmful. I think it's harmed a lot of children. A lot of adult kids as well. And it's harmed a lot of people. Just that blanket story. Not all mothers love their children. It's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. But a lot of people are starving. They're starving for their mother's love, and their mother's never going to give them that. And it's something that needs to be acknowledged. It's something that needs to be acknowledged in order for us as human beings to collectively evolve. Because there's certain things we need to evolve. I believe we need to evolve out of tribalism. We've done amazing things. We've done amazing things, but we've yet to evolve out of tribalism. And tribalism is an issue. It's an issue. I come from my culture. We're extremely tribal. And it's caused issue.
I think we tried. We're constantly trying to move out of tribalism.
Yeah,
but new issues come up that we don't address.
Yeah.
And it then perpetuates and grows like a mole across society.
It does.
And and I guess that's what's interesting about this podcast space, having these types of conversations and getting these types of messages out to kind of at least start some sort of external conversation or realization, But yeah, I think about the human body hasn't evolved for hundreds of years, thousands of years, right? And we seem to think that we can grasp how quickly technology has evolved, but we can't.
Yeah.
And what that does is it actually makes people scared.
Yeah.
It makes people scared.
Yeah.
I think about, and I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, but the year 2000, the .com boom, Y2K, it was holy shit, the whole world is going to come to an end because the clocks.
I remember, yeah.
Because the clocks won't be able to handle going to 00, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, nothing happened. And then when the .com boom happened, everyone was like, oh, you need a website, you need a website, you need a website. And all those people that didn't have a website were like, we're so scared of this internet thing. We're not really going to do anything with it. We're just going to sit and wait, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone had a website. And then social media came. We're like, oh, we're really scared of that. We're not really going to do that. But we were the same guys that just saw .com boom, and now we've got a website, but we're not going to do social media, right?
I remember when 2000s was meant to be this new point of history, new point in our existence, and look, I was 12 at that time, but I remember being told, there's going to be flying cars and all this amazing thing's going to happen. I bought into it. I bought into it. I was like, oh wow, I'm really pretty excited to, and I was. In the year 2000, I turned 13, so I was like, I'm going to be a teenager, and it's going to be, this new period now, us as human beings. And
hoverboards and
everything, everything. I was so looking forward to it. And then nothing happened.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I was like, that was the moment that I started to understand conspiracy theories, and it was a moment that I started thinking, and I was like, this doesn't. That's the entire world was so certain that it was going to change, that life was going to change, and they fed that to us. I was like, did they lie, or like what the hell was going on? You know, obviously at that time I couldn't answer those questions, but those were the sorts of thoughts I was having. And I was like, I don't like this. You know, I kind of felt a bit betrayed, to be honest. I was like, oh wow. So, yeah,
it is interesting. So, like, as I said, like pre-2000, everything was like done on pen and paper, right? It was all tactile.
yes,
And then .com happened, and everybody needed a website. And like when we were still on pen and paper, like information was power. If you knew something, you were valuable. Which is why those encyclopedia door knocker sellers sold so many encyclopedias.
Yeah,
because it was information.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Like information was coming to your doorstep and you could buy it, right? And then .com happened. It was like, oh my God, you can look up information. Like, but the problem was that no one was quality assuring the information. So there was some information that was shit.
Right.
It was incorrect.
Right.
And then they came up with Wikipedia. And then it was like, okay, we can't get away with fake stuff now, you know, even though there's some fake stuff still on there.
Yeah.
We're at a stage now where it's more about collaboration and using social media and all the AI and everything to work out or coordinate yourselves so that you are making progress and pushing everybody forward. But there's still some people, I think, that are in that information is power type mode.
Oh, interesting.
And they're not sharing, you know.
Yeah, interesting.
Like when I was a photographer, which I mentioned before we started, I was always like telling people how I do stuff. Like I was always filming myself, and I was always like sharing like tips and tools and tricks and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd get like photographer mates saying, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Because I'm not gatekeeping.
Yeah.
If you can do it better than me, I want to see it."
Yeah.
You know, because if you've done it better than me, that's great. I've just like given you the tricks to the trade and you've like enhanced it. I want to know how you did it now.
Yeah.
So we can push the quality bar like higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
You know? But instead like people are like, oh, I'm not going to tell them where this location is. Or I'm not going to tell them what equipment I have.
Yeah, it's a very
like all of this, you know?
It's a very fear-based mentality to have.
Yeah.
You know, and whereas what you're doing was innovation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the key difference. I mean, the reason why, for example, the West is what it is, the reason why it has all that it has, it's because of innovation. You know, and I grew up in an environment like, and coming back to Islam, innovation is a sin. You're not allowed to innovate. So the idea of evolving the religion, for example, which is what some people try to do or start to have that conversation, it's a sin. You're not allowed to do, which has then affected, you know, Muslim nations, you know, but the West, you know, evolved, and because, you know, the difference between like a democracy, for example, and like a theocracy is that, you know, in democracy, you know, you live in a society where innovating and helping evolve the society, you know, you get rewarded. Versus theocracy, your focus is not innovation. Your focus is pleasing the powers that be, subservience. So, you know, submission versus innovation. you know, and what you're talking about is effectively, at least from what I'm hearing, is that you know, those who are hoarding, you know, the techniques or whatever, or networks and stuff like that, they're not innovating. They're not looking to give back in a way that makes society better, or increases to the well-being of, you know, your fellow man. 'Cause that's the only way we can evolve. That's the only way we can grow. And that's the only way we've been able to do what we're doing, is because we've helped our fellow man live better. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just coming back to the question.
Oh yes.
I've
forgotten the question.
Before we went on that journey,
Yeah.
how long ago did you have that conversation with your mum?
Yes. Oh yes. Oh my god. Yeah.
Do you want a drink?
Yes. Water. Yeah. Whatever you have. Oh.
Sparkling.
Oh. Cheers. Cheers.
This podcast is not sponsored by Sparkling, but if you do want to sponsor us, I need 3 cases. Every flavour.
Do it. Yeah. So, in terms of having a conversation with my mother, first I had to be okay with who I was, regardless of what she was going to say. I was going to be who I was. So I'd already made up my mind, and it was never about convincing her, or I got to a point where it was never about convincing her. It was never about a conversation of acceptance. There was a conversation of, this is what it is. I know where you stand, and that's fine, but I'm not going to be beholden to your ideology or how you think I should live my life. So, but initially it was a gradual. I just let her see the changes. So, for example, in Islam, once a year, Muslims fast for 30 days. It's called Ramadan. And so I started fasting when I was 14. It was like 2001.
But you only eat after the sun's gone down, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. That's right.
I did a water fast for 4 days.
Oh,
I didn't eat anything. That was some hard shit.
Well, God's going to be happy with you.
I know. It was not sparkling water either. So during
Ramadan. So of 2015, I didn't fast.
Right.
I didn't even explain myself. I just woke up the next day and started making breakfast.
Right.
And then she walked into the kitchen. She heard there was noises, and she was just like, "What's going on?" So I'm in the kitchen and I'm making breakfast. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm making breakfast."
Yeah.
And she's like, "But it's Ramadan." And I said, "Yeah, I understand it's Ramadan, but I'm making breakfast, and I'm going to eat my breakfast, and I'm going to get on with the rest of my day."
Yeah.
And she was so just, I don't even know what the word is. She was
Livid.
Livid, mortified. She just could not believe it. And in one part, it felt like she was angry at the fact that I disobeyed her personally, and the religion was like a good excuse. Yeah, it was a good excuse to explain her anger.
Yeah.
You know, to justify her anger.
Yeah. So you've got brothers and sisters?
Yes.
So they were living in the same house as you then?
At the time, no. So my older sister, you know, had kids, and she was living. Yeah, she was living on her own. My older brother was in.
So you're the youngest?
No, I'm the second youngest.
Oh, second youngest.
Yeah, but I might as well be the youngest because I was the one who stayed home the longest. But at the time, I was the only one there because, you know, my sister's had her own kids, and my older brother was living in Somalia at the time, and my younger brother was also at Somalia at that time. From memory, at the time was also in Somalia, so I was the only one there.
Right.
She was livid, but it was more because in her eyes I had disrespected her. I had broken her.
Disrespect.
I didn't obey her.
Yeah.
I didn't submit.
Yeah.
And I didn't submit. I'm acting like an individual. I'm coming to my own conclusions, and that was a no. That was an absolute no. So I grew up with a lot of violence at home. A lot of physical violence,
Right.
a lot of emotional violence. Like that was just a given.
Yeah, I know what that's like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Emotional blackmail.
yeah. So,
and I know physical violence as well, but anyway.
okay, yeah. I don't know about you, but for me, the physical violence stopped when I was 15 because I became stronger than her. But she couldn't. She couldn't. She couldn't. She couldn't beat me anymore.
Right.
So that stopped.
Well, my dad started working away when I was 8. And so I guess him working away, it kind of like slowly tapered off into more emotional, like.
Yeah. I don't know what's worse. Sometimes I think the emotional is worse than the physical.
I'm still dealing with my trauma.
Yeah.
And whilst after my dad passed away, like 7 years ago, my mum opened up and told us some stuff. And we're like, me and my sister, and my brother were like, what the fuck? I mean, I get, look, I totally get it. I get it. He didn't deal with his trauma. And he took it out on us.
Yeah.
And he particularly took it out on us boys.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And, he worked in the oil industry in the 80s, right? And so the oil industry globally, I think, was one of the only industry, because I think like late 70s, early 80s, there was a global recession.
Oh, okay.
Stock market.
Oh, okay.
And the only industry that was really making any money was oil. And so there was a lot of money thrown around.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like a lot of money. And so him kind of like having all of that, not dealing with his trauma, like just kind of like exacerbated things. Made things worse, and I never really had a relationship with him from the age of 8.
He didn't. Okay.
He tried when I was 18, but like that fell on its ass.
And so you didn't want a relationship with him at that time? Or?
He invited me to come stay with him in Vietnam for 7 weeks, and 2 weeks in, he pissed off to India for work for 2 weeks, and he left me there with his mates. And then when he came back, there was a particular incident, and I'll tell you offline, but I came back to Perth, kind of was like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah. Okay.
Like this, like picture perfect, like, I mean, I know it wasn't perfect, but like this picture perfect, like you had this idea of what he is, who he was, because of the way that he like disciplined you and all of this.
Right,
and then it was just like all wiped away because I got to know what he was really like.
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
And so then I came back and I was like, because imagine the complete opposite to how I am today in terms of demeanor, in terms of energy, in terms of the way that I communicate, right?
Oh, okay.
Imagine the complete opposite. That's what I was before my trip to Vietnam.
Oh,
and then
wow.
I came back from Vietnam. I was like, fuck this shit. Like he created this image and it just completely got obliterated because I got to see who he was. Yeah. And then I was like, nah, I'm going to be who I want to be.
Interesting. So were you like in his shell sort of before that?
I don't know if I was in his shell, but because obviously like this piece around me not fitting in anywhere, not me realizing or understanding who I am, or like all this type of stuff, and then having a parent that would just basically put you down like at any given moment, and not really understand who you are or try to develop you as a human being. And then you go and find out who he is. You're like, how can you be telling me not to do things when I know you're doing things now? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I don't know your dad, so I'm not going to call him, and I'm not using the term narcissist on your dad, but you just triggered the idea that narcissistic individuals, again, not speaking about your parent, your dad, but they rely on this false sense of self that they develop, about themselves. It's complete. They're living in this complete false sense of self, and their entire environment. That they set up their environment so that this false sense of self is maintained. I thought it was the same with my mother. But
yeah. And look, I think it all comes back to him not dealing with his trauma, and maybe he had trauma like when he was younger as well, and him not dealing with it because that information wasn't seen as, maybe that information wasn't readily available. Maybe the research wasn't available. Maybe the understanding wasn't available, and maybe it was seen, oh, you got to go speak to a psychologist. Oh, I'm not mentally insane.
Yeah, right.
Whereas now, like, it's actually healthy to go speak to a psychologist. Get things off your chest. Be able to deal with stuff. Get a third person's perspective. But he was, I guess, he just didn't deal with stuff. When he passed away, and even to this day, I still get messages from his mates from overseas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I still get messages. And whenever I like post something, or like when I used to post stuff about like photos of mine, right? They would like direct message me.
Oh, okay.
And they'd be like, "Oh, your dad would be so proud." Blah 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 blah.
Oh,
and I'm thinking to myself, it would have been great if he actually told me that.
Yeah.
Right. Never once did he say that.
Do you think they had bought into the image that he had constructed? Do you think that's who they're responding to? That's who they're talking about versus the real version that you experienced?
No, I don't actually know. I don't actually know. Because the next thing that they would say was, yeah, that he would be proud of you, but you know that he was the hardest man that they ever knew. And I'd be like, what do you mean?
Yeah, wow, okay.
If you ever talked about your emotions, he'd tell you to toughen up.
Right.
Like, don't talk about your emotions around him because he was like hard ass, right?
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's why I never get along with him because you know what? Let's talk about our emotions. I want to talk about my emotions all of the time.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Because I used to when I was a kid, I would cry at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Right?
I used to as a kid. I used to. I remember probably before I hit 14, 15.
Yeah.
I used to cry at everything. It used to worry me. I was like, this is what I'm going to be like when I become a man. Like, I can't be crying all the time.
Yeah, I've got a theory on why I was like that, but this is the extent. So I used to get told off by him for making too much noise at the dinner table, clanking my spoon on the bowl whilst eating rice, right?
Yeah.
And I'd cry. Because I'm always like, I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, you tell me off for that?
Yeah.
But that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right?
I can imagine that might have triggered a sense of helplessness in that situation because you're like, I don't know what to do about this.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it now, you're kind of like, well, it seems absolutely ridiculous that how are you supposed to eat the rice then?
I mean, but it's just a clink. Who cares?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, like, you gotta pause this for a second. I just realized my phone's about to die. I've got my charger. If I can plug my phone.
Oh, yeah. What type of phone?
I've got an iPhone. I've got my charger as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sorry, dude, I need my. Sorry, man, this is annoying.
That's okay.
I've got a poetry reading that I'm going to after this.
Nice.
Thank you so much. Cheers for that.
And we're back.
Yes.
Yeah, so they used to always say that he was like the hardest man they ever knew. But my theory around me crying all the time was that I was just so sensitive and like taking on lots of energies and frequencies all of the time, and I didn't know how to like process it.
Yeah. I guess being male as well would have been. I don't know about you, but for me, it was an added extra layer because we're pretty close in age.
Yeah.
So you know, when I was growing up, it's not like what it is now these days, but it was, you know, men don't feel.
Yeah.
Don't feel. Your the only emotion you can express is anger because that's masculine. But all other kinds of emotions is, you know, feeling sad or just being a bit more intuitive. That was seen as like feminine, or that's not picking up on things that you know, make you feel uncomfortable or you don't like. That's, you know, you're being too sensitive, and it was all, and I always had a little bit of a complex about that because I was told that's not what a man is, you know, which I've since, you know, learnt that was inaccurate and if anything, because, you know, I was taught masculinity is an anti-fragile thing. Like that's what a man is, not fragile. But I thought, you know, suppressing all your emotions was very fragile. Well, I thought that was, you know, I learned that was quite fragile. And the thing that you were meant to, I don't know about you, but you know, being you know, the environment that I grew up in, as a man, the thing that you were meant to be was like a lion. That's like you know, you're meant to be very alpha and strong, and you know, you don't take bullshit and all that kind of stuff. And but all of that I learnt was just cope, and it was just really oppressive and making you subhuman, you know. And you know, I do respect the masculine. I do embrace the masculine. But to me, the masculine is should be based on anti-fragile things, like, for example, things that are within your control. So if your masculine is based on your physical strength, well, if you don't die, you're going to get old one day, and your physical strength is going to go. So then does that mean you're no longer a man anymore? Do you have to go through this crisis because you're no longer strong anymore? So for me, you know, masculine is all things that you can control, like such as your character, your integrity, you know, your ability to say what you mean and mean what you say, look people in the eye, that kind of stuff, you know.
But you can also embrace your feminine.
Yes, absolutely.
Like people don't have to be masculine all of the time. And it doesn't matter what sex you are. Like, you can be feminine and masculine at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like all the different roles that we play. Sometimes you have to be more feminine or more masculine, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that we are creatures of survival and creatures of adaptation, and if you can adapt to the situation to get the best outcome that you're looking for or that you're striving for, well, then you've won.
Yeah. So for you in that kind of situation with that idea, what's the difference between like adapting, which is the good thing, which is who we are. We adapt, you know, and a healthy person adapts to their environment. They adapt to their situation and all that sort of stuff. But to you, what would be the difference between like someone who adapts really well versus a Machiavellian? You know, that's something that I quite often think about is, well, what is a difference and how do you, what is a difference? Because sometimes people use that interchangeably. I've met Machiavellians who use it, but you know, I adapt really well, but I'm like, no, you're not doing, the way you're conducting yourself is not you adapting. You've completely changed your value system completely in this particular environment, you know, versus that environment, you know, and then it's like, well, who are you? And this comes back to the whole, you know, basis of my own podcast, which is all about, you know, living authentically. And what does that mean? Can we actually live authentically? Can we be authentic? You know?
I think we can. I think it's a matter of if you're waking up in the morning and you can look in the mirror and you can be happy with what you see, or like at night, for example, exact same situation. You're like brushing your teeth, you look yourself in the mirror and go, did I have a good day today? Did I make a difference today? Whatever that difference is, you know. And like people's value systems could be completely different, right? Like if they're goal orientated or they're wanting to screw someone over. Did they screw that person over? Like, who am I to say that their behavior of screwing someone over isn't good for them? It may not be good for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I'm not condoning that. All I'm saying is if that person can look at themselves in the mirror and say, did you achieve, like, are you happy with the person that you can see in the mirror? So be it.
You think it's relative? You think it's all?
Yes, I think it's relative.
Yeah,
I think it's relative to the individual.
But what if? But what if they're causing harm?
Well, if they're causing harm, like obviously that's not great. And I'm not condoning that.
Yeah.
But what I also understand is they're causing harm because someone caused harm to them.
Yeah, but at some point, I think the cycle needs to end.
Correct.
Yeah.
At some point, the cycle does need to end.
Yeah, and but also, do you think that people who cause harm are always people who have been harmed in their past, or do sometimes people just do bad things because it's beneficial for them in that moment and they're of sound mind and it's not a trigger or it's not a response to their own trauma? It's just that I'm gonna get over this person because right now it's going to be really beneficial for me. I might get that promotion if I do X, Y, Z. And you know what? I'm going to do it because it means I'm going to have more power in the company, as an example. And then I'm going to have more money and I'm going to be able to travel, do whatever, X, Y, Z.
But Johnny, who does that when he's 35, at some point when he was 6, little Johnny got pushed over by the kid at school and got his lolly taken from him. So at 6, his value of trying to overcompensate and be aggressive and screw people over was as a result of being pushed over at 6 and losing his lollies.
So, so for you in that equation, where does his sense of agency play a role? Like, where does agency fit into this?
Agency from what point of view?
As in, like, so he had that experience at 6. Someone took his lollipop. That traumatized him, and then and based on that experience, he's now developed this. You take what you need because this world is crazy. It's gonna take from you. If you don't take, it's gonna take from you. So that's how he lives his life based on this fundamental value now, based on that experience. So then then he gets his promotion. He does that. He takes. At what point does he no? At what point is this now become an active decision that he's making rather than something that's controlling his decision making? For you, because it's a big question, but for you, if there is,
I think subconsciously it started at an early age, and it started at an early age because, you know, his mum or his dad or someone packed that lollipop, right? And he wanted to enjoy that lollipop. And it all comes back to this, like, these value systems. And, you know, throughout our childhood and throughout our life, we tell ourselves these stories internally. You know, like, you listen to your own voices. You can get to a point where you're telling yourself a story and you believe it. It's not true. You know, like, there's that saying, right? Like, if you think you can't make $1 million, well, then you're right. But if you think you can make $1 million, you're also right, right? Because we can do anything. It's whether or not we can put our minds to it and orchestrate it. Anything is possible now.
So he is choosing.
He is choosing,
yeah.
but as a result of a risk versus reward value system that has built up over time, and he's realised that he's going to do certain things to get the rewards. And it is, I think it is also based on this, what's the word? This kind of like structure and culture that's been created, you know, like dog eat dog. Well, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know what industry Johnny works in. Maybe he works in finance.
It's every industry.
They're fucking ruthless.
It's
Yeah.
every industry.
It
Yeah,
is
yeah.
every
It's
industry. I mean, look, cost of living's like going through the roof, right? So
yes, well, it's really testing people's you know, morals.
yeah,
You know, well, whatever your morals are, it's really the point. Moments like that is when you really get to see, oh, okay, am I really about what I was saying, or am I not? And that's for anyone to for each person to decide and to do. You know,
I mean, look, have you seen that Netflix series Reinventing Anna?
no, I haven't.
So, me and my fiance, we just finished it last night.
Okay,
Right,
yeah.
it's a 9-episode limited series. Right,
Okay.
It's about this 25-year-old who basically, like, she's a con artist.
Yeah.
In New York, and she claims to be this German heiress, right? And she, like, gets into the elite like parties and is like conning people. She's got no money. She's literally got no money.
Yeah.
And so basically it follows this reporter, and she wants to report on this story, blah, 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 and then it uncovers this story about her, blah, 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 right? She's got no money. Her dad's like a coal miner or something in, like, Germany.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
And anyway, so she, like, gets this equities manager to like put in this like loan to like this elite finance company for like $50 million, right?
My God, yeah.
And it gets to the very last like stage in the application process where they want to send people over to Germany to just validate the family trust and all the assets, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
And then she gets caught because she went to like so she had like this group of friends, and one of the friends they went on a holiday, and then one of the friends left their Vanity Fair credit card there to pay for things, but it was only just supposed to be like a hold.
Yeah.
Ended up being like the whole thing, and it was like so she got caught, then she went to jail, and like all of this, right?
Yeah.
So this is all very interesting. How can a 25-year-old con artist get to a point where she's like coaxing all of these institutions?
Yeah.
And then at the end, the TV series, it shows the Instagram pages of the actual people, the actual characters, right? Because it's based on real life, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, okay.
The actual
Okay.
characters, and they've all made money out of the situation. And then you go to the actual chicks, the con artists, like Instagram page, Anna Delvey, right? She's got a fucking ankle bracelet on.
Yeah.
She was on the Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, really?
So she's got no money,
That's hilarious.
and she's a celebrity now. So the point that I'm making is these institutional cultural structures, like, at what point do we go, huh? Is that actually right? Like,
Well, they'd have to have the gift of gab for sure.
oh
You
yeah.
know, they should have to have the gift of gab. I'm just thinking about that. What was that woman that copied? Was it Steve Jobs? What was big eyes, blonde woman? What is she? What was her story? She complete like fraud, and she I think came up with a company and was selling things, but I can't even remember what her name was. But
Yeah.
you know, she was copying Steve Jobs, and people fell for it.
Mm.
People fell for it. And I remember so seeing as you have a podcast, you have recently there was this page that followed me on they didn't follow me, they messaged me, and their all pages was about promoting podcasters.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm very curious if you get this as well. Have you ever gotten this? And so they messaged me and they said, "Do you want us to promote your podcast?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, if you want to, like, you can, by all means, you can share my stuff."
Mm.
And then this page, so I looked through the page and I couldn't work out, you know, who it belonged to. If there was I just couldn't identify this page.
Mm.
You know, with your podcast, you can identify it. With mine, you can see the person who runs the podcast and stuff like that, you know. So I couldn't really identify if this was run by a company or an individual or whoever. So then they messaged me. So then they replied and they said, "Oh yeah, you know, these are all the pages that we like manage."
Right.
And
Bum
yeah, yeah, and it's going to cost you only $75.
No, thank you.
And we'll guarantee you between 1,000 to 3,000 followers.
I just block and delete.
Yes, I was like,
I'm like, bro, are you for real?
oh my God, and so I was reading that and I was thinking, God, this is, it must be working, obviously, because for them it must be working. And so I was like, I'm like, so how do you? I'm like, are your followers bots? Like, how do you guarantee 1,000 human beings? How do you guarantee that? And they're like, oh, we'll show you these pages, and I'm like, these could be bots. I don't care, but I said, but how do you guarantee 1,000 human beings who have free will and agency to like what they like, and what? What? So I said no, thank you. But coming back to this whole, authenticity thing, this whole stuff, like they're banking on people's desperation, banking on people's desire to be somebody, because these days, having a big social media following means you're somebody.
I literally don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I get it. I get why people get so wrapped up into all of that, right? But do you actually care about it? Is it fulfilling your life?
Yeah. Well, I've had to learn that some people are not interested in fulfillment.
No, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I am too, but it was a shock to me. It was a shock to my system.
I guess it would be hard if you start questioning, you're like, well, why wouldn't you want to be fulfilled?
Yeah, like it just didn't make any sense to me. But I had to learn. I did learn. I eventually learned. No, Magan, not everyone is. They're genuinely not interested in fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so when I learned that, I was like, oh my God. Okay, all power to you. Wow.
Or no power to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely a disempowering way to be. It's not.
I think it just comes down to everybody's on their own journey, regardless of your age, your experience, your mental capacity. Everybody is on a journey.
Yeah.
And you could be 62 years old and still only be on a 12-year journey because you haven't lived, because you haven't experienced all the hardships of, someone that's 23, So what I've taken from my experience is that you have to just be open and acknowledge everybody else's knowledge, wisdom, I take things how they are, and everyone I come in contact with, I value, I learn from, all of that, right? But you also have to take it with a grain of salt and go, everybody's at different levels of, their journey. They're in different, from a car analogy point of view, they're in different gears.
Yeah.
They could be 40 years old and they're still in gear one.
Yeah.
They haven't worked stuff out, right? That's okay. Yeah. Maybe they're just going to go like that, right? But it's okay, and then you have to internalize, and I go, I'm just going to do me the way that I think it needs to be done,
Right.
And then I just do it,
Right.
And see what happens. And at this stage in my life, I'm 45 this year. At this stage, I know that everything will be okay.
Oh wow, that's really good. That's really
because I've lived that many lives. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a really good belief system to have, or a core belief to have. That's really
Look, I have my good days and I have my bad days. But at the end of the day, shit will work itself out for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, wow. I'm curious to know how you developed that, where you got that core belief from. Was it the evidence of going through something and then coming out of it, okay or unscathed or whatever, and then going through that process again with another situation.
Yeah. So I've transformed myself like probably 4 or 5 times in my life. And one of my good mates in Perth, he's always like, he goes, you're just going through a transformation. And I'm like, fuck this shit. I'm like, fuck it. He's like, you're just going through a transformation. And he goes, and you know what? I know that when you get out of this, you're going to be 10 times better, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah, that's dope.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He sounds like a good mate. Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, yeah. I love that.
He's-
love that.
Yeah, so he's always like, you just got to remember. He goes to me, you're the only person I know, Andrew, who can get through hell and back multiple times and come out a better person. And I'm like, yeah, but it fucking sucks.
Yeah, right.
It's also the reason why, so that this whole leg is tattooed. I got a
okay.
leg sleeve and my
Okay.
arm.
Okay.
I'm getting a dragon put on my back.
Oh wow, yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
of
okay.
that whole transformation.
Yeah, wow, that's dope. I got my first tattoo this year, so it's just nothing as spectacular as yours. But
No, that's cool.
it's just
Dare to know.
yeah. So I've always wanted a tattoo,
Yeah.
but I wasn't out of my past life. 'Cause, yeah, that's dope. That's awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, I toyed with between getting a sleeve done or not, and I'm still umming and ahhing, but we shall see.
So why dare to know?
Yeah, so this quote is actually from it's from an essay by the philosopher Immanuel Kant.
Mm-hmm.
So he has an essay, a popular essay, where he defines what the Enlightenment means and what it is. So I'm very interested in the Enlightenment period because I think that the Enlightenment process or the ideas that have come out of the Enlightenment period has been very healing to the world, So in this essay where he defines what the Enlightenment is, he basically says, the Enlightenment process or the Enlightenment is, the ability for you to think critically. And so in the first paragraph he has, dare to know. Do you dare to kind of leave this state of immaturity and get into your mature state? And when you dare to know, you dare to ask. So so I've got the English translation, which is dare to know, and superior orde, which is the Latin. And so it's one of my favorite essays of all time. So I'm like, I'm gonna put that on my body. So it's a reminder for me. Am I gonna have the courage to not be in my in a state of immaturity, which is what the world kind of the world benefits off you being in an immature state, in a state of dependence. The world benefits, and so it's a reminder for me. You dare to know. You dare to ask questions. You dare to
Challenge.
Yeah, and think a bit deeper and think a bit more and
challenge the status quo.
Yeah, if need be. Yeah. If need be, and everyone has their roles in society, but like it's, things can't evolve without if we don't question the underlying assumptions of the way we've structured ourselves. The only way to evolve is to question those assumptions. And innovations are really important to me. Innovation is what has allowed us to, lead the lives that we lead. So yeah.
When did you become a poet?
Good question. Yeah, good question. So there wasn't like so my culture is very, I come from an oral tradition, and so poetry was just the norm in my culture.
Mm.
It's just a norm. He's speaking metaphors and he's speaking poetry. So that was normal to me. And the music was very poetic, and that was just my everyday. It was.
Did you ever walk in the kitchen and be, Mum, what will be, will be?
No, I didn't. But whenever she would, I didn't. But my mother would. Whenever she would like curse at us, she would curse at us through poetry.
What would she say?
Things like, may your stomach, may your gut fall out of your body, and it was just, or she would say things like, she used to say these things. Like if I ever went out, she would say this saying, in Somali, it's "Akti jokesam with might be able to konta," which, but effectively, I'm pretty bad at translating, but effectively means, the feet that doesn't stop. Right, going out, and the feet that doesn't stop will come to no shame at some point. So she'd always say that. I'd be like, oh my god. And so, but
that in itself, I think, would be quite hard growing up in a household where your mum's like cursing in poetry.
Yeah,
it's like, huh? What?
Yeah.
What is this you speak of?
Yeah, it's so vivid.
Yeah,
it's so vivid and it's so violent.
I mean, look, my mum's Indonesian.
So is she Muslim?
No,
she's not. Okay,
no, she's not.
Yeah, but she would have grown. She grew up in Indonesia.
Yes,
so she would have grown up with a lot of Muslims.
Yes. But her dad was Dutch and her mum was Chinese. Right.
Oh,
so
okay.
the Dutch Chinese.
Okay.
But what's interesting with Indonesian as a language compared to English is the grammar's backwards.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
She like really fucked me up. She'd like throw some Indonesian words. So she learned how to speak English by living in English-speaking countries.
Okay.
But then she'd like talk to us in Indonesian and she'd fucking like fuck the whole grammar system up. So I was like, how did I come out of that unscathed?
So did you struggle with English growing up? Did you like
No.
literacy? Yeah. Okay, no, you didn't. Yeah.
No. But like that's just like
yeah. It's funny. But so that was kind of my relationship to poetry.
Gotcha.
That was it. And then so my household wasn't very education wasn't really promoted. It wasn't really promoted. Literacy wasn't really promoted. So there's no books in my house. I didn't grow up with books. I didn't like really read when I was in like primary school. I didn't really read.
You just read the Quran.
Yeah.
That's the only book.
But the only book that was promoted or revered or the only kind of reading was the Quran. So I used to go to like Saturday school, and had to memorize the Quran.
Read the same book.
Yeah, because it's the word of God, so it's above all kind of books.
Don't get me wrong, like
I was saying that sarcastically, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think it's quite noble for people to have so much faith in religion. But when I think about religion, I'm like, don't they all just want the same thing?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, yeah. Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
And it's like, like how about we just start a religion about humans and humans being, we're all humans.
Yeah.
We all have the same biology. We
Yeah.
all have the same types of brains. We all want the same things.
Yeah.
We want to look after our friends and we want to look after our family, and some of us want to have families and some of us don't, and like we all just want to get along.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone.
No, I know.
Not everyone, and power is a thing that we crave and desire, and and control, and being a top dog and blah blah. So
Little Johnny who got his lollipop stolen.
yes, it's all his fault. It's all his fault.
Yeah.
Bloody Johnny. But yeah. So that was like my introduction to poetry.
Yeah.
And then I always enjoyed English at school. Yeah, I really enjoyed it because it gives you flexibility to you're able to think, English. And then we study books and teachers asking us questions, and I found that fascinating. I was like, "What, you're asking what I think about this character and blah blah." I thought that was amazing. And then so I finished high school. Didn't really think about, I would write poems at school. Like I'd write poems at school and I'd write poems here and there, but it wasn't something that I had taken seriously. I was just doing it whenever I felt like it. And then when I turned 25, that was when the year that I had started reckoning with my life. Like I wasn't I got to the point where I was like, yeah, things aren't all right at home, my life. I have to actually face this. And kind of sort of began to chip away at the denial. The denial, delusion, the kind of stories that I was telling myself, everything's all right, everything's all good, blah, blah. I started chipping away at that. And then I used poetry as a medium to express myself. So that was like, back in 2012. And I'm
So like writing in a journal and like putting it down.
Yeah, and then I read my first poem, I think it was 2013 in front of a stage. So a friend of mine had done it. He's like, "Oh, I think you should do it. So I did it. And I loved the entire experience. I loved the fact that I could write something and then share it with people and, have that conversation with people. I thought that was amazing. So
I think that's actually amazing as well.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that existed.
Yeah. I didn't either.
Like how many people are in the audience?
So at this place I used to go, it's called Slammalama Ding Dong. Don't ask me how they got the name. I don't know.
Did you just call me a ding dong?
I don't know how, why, what, but that's what this place was called. So it was a spoken word group.
Right.
Okay. And so when I started off, so for me poetry is like, it's like a spectrum. It's like spoken word, and then there's like poetry for the page. The spoken word is so the difference is that spoken word has like a performance element to it. So you perform your poetry. And the poetry for the page, you're creating poetry for people to read. And so a lot of poets fall on that spectrum somewhere. So I started off there and enjoyed the experience, but I realized that I was more for the page rather than because there was no performance element to what I was doing. I was just literally reading my poems.
Is that because you were like new at it?
As in why I started at this.
No, it's in as in because you'd just been writing stuff down, and then your friend was like, "Hey, you should do this."
Yeah.
And then you went and did it, and then you realize, "Oh, that's not for me."
Yeah.
Because there's no theatrics to it.
Yeah.
Or like, because of what I'm envisaging is like animation or like, like it's a performance.
Yeah, so people get really animated and loud and all that sort, like just they embody their poetry through their expression of how they use their body, their space, etc. So that wasn't for me. I realized it wasn't for me, so I started writing for the page, and so ever since then I've been writing for the page. So a number of years ago I published a collection of poems called From Grains to Gold, and it was about grief. And so each chapter was exploring a stage of grief. So my goal was whoever's going to read it, that they would go through the 5 steps. They'd be thinking about particular grief that they're experiencing, and they would go through each stage, and then hopefully by the end of it, they get to the acceptance stage. Hopefully they've kind of developed some kind of meaning through their own grief, and you know, and so I published that. I published that during my third year of my so I studied creative writing. I published that book my third year of my creative writing degree, and then been writing ever since. And then kind of took a step back from publishing stuff because I was then going through my whole questioning Islam and who I was. So I was going through all of that, and then once I kind of made sense of me.
The cat's doing
I thought it was me. Hello. Once I made sense of me and had a new vision, I've since come back and I've got a book coming out, hopefully end of next month.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I'm so excited to be sharing it with the world because it's a small. I don't know if you know the poet's journey generally. I don't know if you
know.
So typically, and it's it's not a hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, poets publish what they call a chapbook, which is a small collection of poems. And I often like to use music as a point of reference. So like a chapbook is equivalent to an EP. And so once they publish that, they share that so people can understand their style of writing, their tone, the things they write about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then they publish a full-length collection after that.
Right.
It's a bigger volume. It's like an album.
Right.
So it's a full volume.
Yeah.
Full body of work.
So the full body of work is what's coming out next month?
So I did it the other way around.
Oh.
So I'd published a full-length collection.
Right.
And so now, since I'm reintroducing myself again,
yeah,
I'm publishing a chapbook.
Right.
And so this chapbook is based on 21 films that my favorite 21 films of all time. And so I'm responding to these films. I'm responding to it through poetry, and I'm relating the themes in all these films based on my life story. And so a lot of these films are kind of coming of age because I feel like I've been coming of age my entire life, and
that's okay.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes. That's right. That's right.
I think it's it just shows the level of deep understanding you have of yourself and this like forever evolution of creating yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of one movie?
Yeah, I can.
Is he going to say Dune? Is he going to say Dune?
No, I'm not.
Damn. He's going to say When Harry Met Sally. No.
No, I'll give you two films. Sorry.
Okay.
More if you want. But one of the films that I'm responding to, it's a novel turned film. So Breath by Tim Winton.
Right.
So it was turned into a film. I don't know if you've seen the film. If you haven't, you have to.
I haven't seen the film.
Okay. Have you heard of it?
I'm sorry. No.
Oh my God, you have to watch it.
Breath.
Yes. So it's it was produced by the film was produced by Tim Winton, but also Simon Baker.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. You would have had to have seen it somewhere.
Maybe I've seen it.
Yeah, you would have had to have seen even the
Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Breath.
So it's a response to the film's basically it's a coming of age film. Two friends who learn to surf. One of the boys, so this older professional surfer in his time, teaches them how to surf basically, and it's kind of coming of age about masculinity, and it's about surfing, but it's also these two characters, two boys. They're have different sensibilities. One of them has basically zero risk assessment, and he just takes risks, and he's boisterous and all that sort of stuff. The other character is more cautious. He thinks before he acts. But they both really, love surfing, and so I've responded to that film, and so in each poem, so I borrowed the title of each film and used that as the title of each poem. So the poem is called Breath, and so I in the poem I've kind of dedicated this poem to my older brother who'd passed away because he the character that was really boisterous and didn't have any risk assessment really reminded me of my brother. My brother had zero risk assessment growing up. He just would do anything, and he was a thrill seeker. And so is his character.
Mm.
So Pikelet, the other more reserved character, he is similar to me. Whereas when I always, when I was growing up, I always thought before I spoke, and I was more cautious, and I was more safety was an important thing for me, etc. And so my brother and I were so different in that. So I respond to that. That's kind of what the poem's about. Another film that I absolutely love is 17 Again with Zac Efron.
17 again.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I have.
Yes. Okay. So I absolutely love that film.
Okay.
I absolutely. So I love all Zac Efron's films.
He's got some crackers. He's got some not so good ones, but that's okay.
Yeah, I love all of it. Started from High School Musical all the way to I love it all. But anyway, so
The Iron Claw. I just don't know about the Iron Claw.
Oh really?
Bro.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
I think you're just the Zac Efron groupie.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I am. And so yeah, one of the films that features
17 Again.
17 Again. And I really love that. I love the concept of how the film plays with time. I think it touches on the universal feeling that we all have. If I could go back in time, I'd do this differently. If I could, so it's playing with age, it's playing with time in this way that's really universal.
Well, that's actually a really good segue into one of my common questions is what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. What advice? I would say stick to your values. It's going to serve you in life. And don't let fear control you. Yeah, that's definitely what I say. And it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right.
It's hard. It's hard when you're young and you've got fear because you don't have any other reference points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than what you've gone through. And so that's when, look, the bullies that I had, like, if anything, I, thank them. Because they made me who I am today.
Right.
I feel sorry for them because they were fearful of who I was. I was foreign,
Yeah.
But, yeah, sure, at the time, I was like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, I'm not a bad person. Like, why am I getting chocolate milk cartons thrown at me every day at school by passing cars?
That was your experience, like your everyday experience?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, right. That's crazy.
And then I had a brick thrown through a front window at our house from a supposed friend that I had to take to court and get a restraining order put on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So was this in the 90s?
Back in Perth, 90s.
Yeah, 90s were rough. It was a rough time.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I get that whole fear thing.
Yeah.
My advice to myself would just try to be stop crying. Have more confidence in yourself.
That's hilarious.
And fucking stop worrying about whether or not things will be okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. Like you're moving around a lot. Like it's no stability and,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it for anything because I have the ability to talk to anybody now.
Right. Hence this podcast. Yeah.
This podcast. Hence this ability to like draw information out. I mean, I had a guy on here. I've mentioned this before. I had a guy on here after the podcast. He's like, I wasn't really going to talk about that part of my life, but I did
Oh, wow. Yeah.
because you made me feel so comfortable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was like, damn,
Yeah.
I need to keep doing this.
Yeah. That's
Like
awesome,
that
yeah.
type of stuff just kind of fuels me and makes me feel good about what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's that's a huge compliment.
And then actually, when when contractors come in to like do stuff,
Oh, yeah.
they like see the setup. They're like, "Oh, what's this?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I do a podcast."
Yeah.
And I had this. I think it was a smoke alarm guy, and it was just after I'd done that podcast with that singer. And the smoke alarm guy was like, "Oh, what's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's podcast, blah blah blah." I said, "I just did this podcast." He's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." He's like, "What's your podcast name? I got to like listen to it."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "That's the shit."
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool because the podcast scene is growing in Melbourne. I think that's so awesome. It's so awesome to, be meeting all kinds of podcasters and who are telling different stories, and they each have their own mission, and it's awesome. It's awesome.
If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
It's just one person.
Just one person.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's such a good question.
Whilst you think for your answer, thank
Yeah.
you so much for telling us a couple of movies from your book.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
Because I think it, like I'm always watching movies, and I'm always like interested in cinematography and like storytelling and stuff
fantastic.
like that.
Well, when the book comes out, I'll get you a copy.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I'll get you a copy for sure. Who would? Oh my God, it's such a good question. It would be, JF Kennedy. Probably JF Kennedy.
Why?
Because I think he was ahead of his time, and he he was obviously president, but he like just his relationship with his best friend Lim Billings, who was gay, and I'm always interested in individuals who, again, think for themselves, but really act in accordance with their own values. And so, given that particular time, I'm just inspired. The fact that he was one of his best friends was gay, and given that particular time, it was a no-no. And I just want to pick his brains about how he viewed the world, and he was also patriotic, and
I think I agree. He was definitely ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Which is a whole bunch of like conspiracy theories about what happened.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And like, if he was so ahead of his time, there definitely would have been people that he like frictioned against.
Yes.
And more powerful people, to the point where
Yeah.
maybe they did orchestrate an assassination.
Right. And my my curiosity comes from that I'm just curious to know what gave him the courage to ruffle feathers. You know, where is that coming from? I want to know where that was coming from. And yeah, if I pick a person now, it would be him. Yeah.
He got pushed over when he was 6 for his lollipop.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right, all right. You've given me the answers to life. You know.
I
That's it.
mean,
I can rest now. I don't have to ask any questions.
it's all about the lollipop.
It is.
No, it's a very esoteric question, and to like be able to sit down with him and go, what gives you the drive to be such an agitator to the point where you got killed?
Yes, and the thing is, because he came from a wealthy family, okay, so there's, at least in this era we live in, possibly back then, or yeah, probably back then, there is a kind of assumption about a rich person's, this idea that rich people are all bad, and poor people are all good. That binary. I'm fascinated with that binary, but I often think it's false. It's another
Stereotype.
yeah, it's another story that's told, and a whole group of people are labeled with that story. And so he came from a very wealthy family and still decided to be who he was, in the face of so his wealth didn't make him who he was. But that's often that's often the misconception, is that whether you have money or not, it says something about you. But from where I'm understanding it, it may or may not, but it's not definitive.
I believe money just magnifies who you actually are.
Right.
Like if you're a generous person and a nurturing person, you're just going to be more nurturing.
Right.
If you're egotistical, then you are going to be more egotistical.
Right.
It just magnifies who you are.
Right. And speaking of money, you've been following what's happening with P. Diddy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we grew up in the 90s, and P. Diddy was one of my heroes growing up.
I remember listening to that album going, fuck, this guy's so good. He's going to be amazing.
I just remember his music videos, and oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing. But
and then 1,000 baby oil bottles. Bro, why you got so much baby oil?
That was so disturbing. Oh my God.
How many babies have you got at your house making this baby oil?
And baby oil lasts forever. It lasts forever. So
my brother drank half a bottle of baby oil when he was younger. Yeah, the maid in Brunei left him in the bath for 2 seconds, and he's just had to get his stomach pumped in hospital.
Oh, you see? Oh, but yeah. So, but speaking of money, someone who had money and power,
money and power,
and that's what he chose to do with his money and power.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is.
It just goes to show that, again, it's this whole House of Cards facade.
Yeah,
you can't believe everything that you see.
No, you definitely can't. So where do you stand with the whole separating artists from their art thing? Well, where are you on that kind of conversation? Do you would you stop listening to P. Diddy now, or R. Kelly? Would you never listen to him?
I saw a meme that R. Kelly was singing a song because P. Diddy's coming into jail. I thought it was fucking hilarious. And look, like it's all good and well to be joking about all this type of stuff, but like, who knows who is on this list that's going to come out
Oh, yeah.
of all these celebrities. I mean, Kevin Hart's already like.
Is he in the list? Is he?
Yeah, he's on. Well, there's news articles about he's on the list. And
Really?
His wife is currently going to divorce him because she's seen something.
Oh my God! Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
I think look. I don't have any P Diddy songs on my playlist on Spotify, and I dare say Spotify is going to take them all down.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So,
but would you, if you were a fan of, were you a fan of R. Kelly, for example, or you weren't?
Nah, not really.
Really? See, I loved R. Kelly's songs.
Right.
Oh my God! Step in the Name of Love. I Believe I Can Fly. Those were my.
Oh yeah, I Believe I Can Fly. But like Boys to Men, like.
Oh yeah. They're my jam. Okay, but let's say Boys to Men were doing what R. Kelly was doing. Would you still listen to their music? For you, do you have? I guess my question is: do you have a clear distinction, a separation between the artist and the art?
No.
You don't. Okay. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if your value systems as an artist don't transpose across over to like your art and vice versa, then like you're dead to me.
If sorry, say again.
So I'll probably never listen to that P Diddy song that he wrote for Notorious B.I.G. anymore.
Oh, you won't?
No, because I know, because like I've got this like image of all these like
okay. So you do
baby
separate
oil
the art.
bottles.
Okay. So you do separate the art from the art. No,
I don't.
No, you don't. Yeah.
Because,
Okay.
Because if news comes out of an artist has done things wrong, their value systems are incorrect.
Yeah,
I won't support that.
So, who's your favorite artist of all time?
Of all time,
like this artist for you is basically God. If he was God, like you love this artist so much. Who's this artist?
I think it would have to be Daft Punk.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, techno.
Oh yeah,
dance music.
I know nothing about that. Yeah.
Mm.
So is that a name of an artist? Or
yeah, there's two of them. They wear the masks.
Oh, okay. And you're a mask like that.
Yeah. I love their songs.
Okay, so if they were doing what P Diddy or R. Kelly were doing.
What? Why you gotta do me like that?
Because that's how when the whole R. Kelly stuff was coming out, I had an existential crisis. I had to figure this out. Am I going to separate the art from the artist, or what am I going to do?
Do you still listen to R. Kelly songs?
I don't because of the nature of his craziness, because I know the nature of who he was speaking to when he was making that music. But if it's playing in a club, I'm going to dance to it. Yeah, that's my line. Like if it's playing in a club, I'm going to dance to it. If it's playing on, in the Uber, I'm going to listen to it. I'm not going to, I'm going to enjoy it for what it is. But that's as far as. But I won't go out of my way to, because arcade music was a part of my life. But since all that, I've stopped listening to his music. So,
I think it's an interesting aspect, though. Like, I guess it just depends on like what's actually true. Media kind of exacerbates things and because all they want to do is get the number of clicks or to get number of views. So until stuff actually comes out, it's kind of like, I think Kevin Hart's pretty funny. But like the stuff that I've read over the last couple of days, I'm like, what? Like, has he really shut down 4 of his restaurants?
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, there was apparently Kim Porter, P. Diddy's.
Yeah.
Apparently, she was writing a book before she died.
Yeah.
Apparently, that book had come out, but it was all just farce.
Yeah.
So apparently, someone got the rights to publish parts of that journal or whatever,
Yeah.
and was selling it on online, but it's complete farce.
Mm.
So you don't know what the smoke and mirror is. But
Yeah, you literally just don't know.
yeah.
So until stuff actually comes out.
Yeah.
So what's plans for the rest of the year? Like you've got the book coming out.
Yeah, I've got the book coming out. Basically just sharing the book with the rest of the world. Releasing more episodes of my podcast. I've just started doing video content, which is a lot of fun.
It
A lot of fun, and I love conversations, and I love talking, and and so it's fantastic. So I'll just be focusing on my podcast and my book, and trying to connect with the outliers as well, because that's really my goal, is to reach out to outliers, reach out to them and connect with the outliers, and and tell my story as well. That's something that's really important to me as a part of my own healing, is to tell my own story. That's a big part of it, and I'm
I'd love to come on your podcast.
Yes, I'll have you on. Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. I'd love to have you on. Yeah.
What's your podcast title?
Inner Self Rising.
Inner Self Rising.
Yeah.
And how can people contact you, or like want to get your book? Or
So you can find me on Instagram at Inner Self Rising. I'm on YouTube as well, Inner Self Rising. I'm Twitter as well, Inner Self Rising. And when the book is out, it's not out yet, but when it is, I'll be publicizing it on social media. So the best places to contact me is through Instagram and YouTube. So at Inner Self Rising.
Amazing. I'll make sure it comes up.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Well, Magan, thanks so much for coming on and having a chat.
Thanks for having me. It was really good. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for listening in. Make sure you hit subscribe, the notification bell, and I'll catch you guys all on the next one. See you.